So we've learned a lot of amazing things that we can put into play in our life from this conference, right? Exercise, eat healthy, maintain a healthy weight. And so I think it's right that we should end the day talking about what gets in the way of us doing those things we know are best for us. So we know what it takes to be healthy, don't we? Reduce your sedentariness, increase your physical activity, eat well. And yet we often fail to act in ways that are consistent with our ideals. So there is this gap between what we know we should do and what we actually do. And I want to talk about how we bridge that gap. But if we're going to talk about why we so often fail to live up to our ideals, we need to look honestly at the human condition and understand what it's like to be a human. So if we do community surveys of people and their well-being, we can discover that about 1 in 3 people at any given time have a diagnosable mental disorder. So I don't buy into the kind of diagnostic system, but what it does mean is that 1 in 3 people, for example, in this room, are struggling with something serious, some strong emotions, maybe going through a difficult divorce, maybe burning out at work, maybe struggling with a parent-child relationship. 1 in 3 people. 1 in 2 people consider suicide at some point in their life. And I'll put my hand up for that. 1, 2, 1, 2. So I'm talking about us today. I'm talking about myself. And there's another thing. So the first thing I want to challenge is this idea that struggling emotionally, that suffering is somehow abnormal. Of course, the Buddhists figured this out a long time ago, that suffering is actually normal, but we're catching up. Now, there's another thing that's normal, and that is being over a BMI of 25 or overweight. And you can see there's been a dramatic increase over the last decades in weight gain. And yet this is another one of those things which you're made to feel there's something wrong with you if you've gained weight, if you're over BMI of 25. But in fact, if you look at the statistics, right, so 61% of people are overweight, another small percent are underweight, you're actually quite abnormal if you're in the normal weight category. So I'm offering some free therapy for people in the normal weight category. So there is this sense that suffering is normal and, not kind of following the best health advice is normal. So I just want to walk you through why that might be. So I'm going to use this little diagram to kind of organize the talk from here out. And you can think of a choice point, which is right in that middle of that circle, is any given point in time where you can make a choice towards your values, towards the things you care about. What kind of person do you want to be in the health domain, for example? Do you want to be physically active, flexible, strong? Or in that moment, you can make the away move. You can do things which are inconsistent with your values. And I'm going to talk about how our environment can undermine our best intentions. And so I'm going to walk you through this. So on the left side, we have kind of the bad habits and the things that undermine our values and the things we care about. And what mindfulness does is it helps us to move to the right side. It helps us to become less reactive to toxic environments, less reactive to our own difficult thoughts and feelings, and then be able to make a choice towards the things we care about. I'm going to be talking about health in this instance. So towards the things we care about. So mindfulness allows us to stop and step back from our difficult environment, from our own feelings and thoughts and self-doubt and insecurity, and in that space created by mindfulness, we have choice. So I hope to use this talk as a kind of mindfulness exercise. And I'm going to talk about 2 kinds of toxic environments that undermine our health and well-being, and what we can do, how we can use mindfulness, compassion, and values to kind of undermine that. So the first problem is one of advertising. So we have to understand that the food industry, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and their job is to get you to buy their food. As a matter of fact, if they could get you addicted to your food, that would be the best possible thing. So what's going to get you addicted? Sugar, salt, fat. So these are sugar, fat, salt delivery systems, right? Now the problem is that they don't advertise it that way, do they? Because you know better than to eat a lot of sugar, fat, and that kind of thing. So in fact, advertising is incredibly deceptive. You can see these different categories of advertising, and the majority of kinds of foods that are advertised are things that are unhealthy. You live in an environment where it's very easy to get access to these unhealthy foods, and that's what is predominantly advertised. And if anybody's taken a walk to the supermarket, do it mindfully next time and see how many things try and convince you that they're healthy. I think it's close to 99%. It's very hard to find something that says, hey, okay, yes, I'm unhealthy if you eat me, buy me. So this was actually taken off. I think they were sued for using that. So even the packaging is organic. See all these tricks that are being used? And it's very easy if you're not mindful and aware that for this stuff to have an influence. Vitamin water, which is loaded with sugar and not much else. So what happens when you're in this kind of environment that is quite toxic, that's got lots of energy-dense food? To understand what happens, let's take a step back to like 5,000 years ago. I'm going to tell you a story of two sisters that lived in the cave days. And both these sisters were alive together in a time of plenty, when there were plenty of elk and lots of food, and they were hunting elk, and they made these elk suits for themselves, and there was loads of food, and they both started to gain weight. And after a while, one sister, their elk suits start to get a bit tight, and they feel uncomfortable in it, And they're like, one sister says to the other, I want to do something about this. I want to lose some weight. Let's go on a low elk diet. And so they both say, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's agree. So they both go on a low elk diet. They watch what they eat. They both eat the exact same thing. One sister, the weight just falls off, and she's walking around in her elk suit. It's fantastic. She looks beautiful. And the other one, no matter what she does, she's looking at this other sister, and she's not losing weight. And she's very frustrated and upset. Does this sound like a familiar scenario to people? Okay, well, what happens when famine comes? Who's more likely to survive? The one that found it hard to lose weight. The one that found it easy to gain weight. It makes no sense for it to be easy to lose weight. So that means that the genes that you currently have are those fat-conserving, hard-to-lose-weight kinds of genes. Sorry, it's not very cheerful to hear that, but so what happens? Well, we don't think that way. We blame ourselves. We beat ourselves up. So this becomes a psychological problem. We feel like there's something wrong with us because we have gained weight, even though I just told you the entire population gained weight. Right? So we want to do something extreme because we think there's something wrong with us. We go on to fad diets. We buy these questionable products. This product, if you spray it in your mouth, it numbs your senses and makes it so you can't eat or taste food. This is called the Hawaii chair. You can still buy this. You don't actually have to do any exercise. It just circles around like this. And you lose weight, just falls off as you do your work. And so what happens is, this is an environment that is stigmatizing, because what happens when you do the quick and easy diet plan and it fails? Do you blame the diet? No, we go out and buy another one. We buy another diet book. We buy another diet product. We buy another piece of equipment. So this is what's called a stigmatized environment, because what happens is when you fail, you don't blame the kind of crazy salespeople that have been telling you this is going to work easily. You blame yourself. You beat yourself up. You hate yourself. And this creates this cycle of anger, giving up, trying extreme things. So how do we solve this? One way we seek to motivate ourselves is through just kind of self-abuse, right? So we think that, well, okay, I'm a screw-up. I've really messed up. I've gained this weight. I've got to really yell at myself and beat myself up and abuse myself. And actually, the research suggests that this is a tremendously bad form of motivation. People who are really hard on themselves and don't respond to their setbacks with kindness are actually less likely to improve, less motivated to recommit to their values and goals. We know that kindness is a far better source of motivation. But I want to ask you, how many people out there, when you fail to live up to your own standards, seek to motivate yourself with kindness? If I could hear your inner abuser outside your body right now, what would it sound like? We'd put it in jail, wouldn't it? We'd do something. We'd say something to it. And that's exactly right. If you have a little girl, an 8-year-old girl struggling with math, and she's really beating herself up and saying she's stupid, and her friends are calling her stupid, you as a parent wouldn't go in and say, yeah, you are stupid. Work harder, you stupid thing. Right? It's so intuitive that kindness, gentleness, And that kind of motivation is much better. So what I'm going to propose is that the first way to kind of break out of this toxic environment, which stigmatizes us, makes us feel like there's something wrong with us, is to step back, and notice that you are a human being who's going to be imperfect again and again and again. And you can release those judgments and recommit to what you care about and respond to yourself with kindness. Now, you're not going to believe me, so I encourage you just to do this as an experiment. Next time you have a health goal and you experience a setback, like tonight when you have, those, whatever would be a setback, 5 cheesecakes and a bottle of wine, just kind of step back and notice it. Notice how hard you are on yourself, and try kindness and recommitment as a motive. Okay? So I want to talk quickly about a second source of our suffering and our inability to kind of sustain our healthy behavior. And that is that a lot of our health behavior seems very extrinsic to us, right? It seems like it's pressured from outside. Other people want us to be thin. Oh, I want to lose weight so I look good in this shirt for other people. My doctor says I should lose weight. So there is a culture of materialism which is basically selling you inadequacy. You look at this picture, for me it's like, wow, this is status and power. I wish I had more of that. It says elegance is an attitude, but of course for $5,000 you can buy it for that watch. I'm not sure how much the horse costs. Now, I've given you an extreme example of something that is unattractive, but if you honestly look at what magazines we buy, there's always these unrealistically beautiful women on these magazines and beautiful men, gorgeous men with six-packs, which I'm telling you, it's very hard to get a six-pack, I can say. And it just makes you feel like I'm not good enough. There's something wrong. I need to have more of that. I need to do more of that. And this is one of the saddest images to me. Mary Tyler Moore, if you don't know who she is, was a feminist icon in the 60s. She was one of the first women to be depicted as, independently successful in TV, and she had a very successful show. But she kept trying to hold on to staying young, and I guess it just I think it, in my opinion, was too much. When health is about other people, when it's for other people, pleasing this invisible audience, doing all this work, struggling, working long hours, or going on these extreme regimes because we want other people's approval, how sustainable do you think that motivation is? If you could get this group of people to smile at you, would that make your life better? These strangers. Who needs the love of a single person when you can have the adoration of a bunch of strangers, right? But I think you guys get that is not what it's about. And so I think the materialistic culture creates a need for these symbols like power, beauty, attractiveness. And it creates this urge to say, if I could just, have more of something, my life would be better. If only I lost the 10 kilos, my life would be better. If only I had that house, my life would be better. So it creates this urge, if I had that car, if I had that watch, my life would be better. And the research is very clear about materialistic pursuits. They don't seem to bring well-being or happiness. As a matter of fact, there's one longitudinal study that looked at people whose goals were things like to hide the signs of aging, to have a look that they've been after, so they're very extrinsic. And the people who succeeded at those goals were more unhappy. So it's very rare in psychology to find success at something leading to unhappiness, but this was an instance. So the cure for this, so these are some of the kind of behavioral consequences, retail therapy, and of course, kind of pushing yourself so hard that you burn out and give up. The alternative, I think this is an important component of mindfulness. So we've talked about compassion, and I think there's a kind of mindfulness that can be practiced with compassion, but also that's very values-oriented. And I think so the alternative to materialism is to ask yourself, what kind of person do you want to be in this health domain? So there's two ways to think about this. One is, what kinds of things do I like doing just for their own sake? If we're talking about exercise. What is fun for me? And we're oriented it towards you. The second question, and I think there's been lots of answers to this today and yesterday, is what are the benefits of doing this health behavior to my life? And we're talking about things like, Maintaining your cognitive functioning. We heard her talk about that earlier. Healthy immune functioning. Living long enough, for me, it's living long enough to see my children's 40th birthday. For me, it is also being able to play with them and exercise and be active with my children. So the key to sustained change is to be able to ask yourself, why would I care about getting up at 6 a.m. to go to the gym or go on this walk? And if you don't answer that question, then I predict that you're not going to sustain the behavior. I think a lot of these fad diets and these things are driven by this kind of urge to escape from these 10 kilos. Well, that's not a value. Escape from 10 kilos isn't a value. Right? Imagine if you had that on your headstone. Finally, after 10 years, she was able to lose those last 5 kilograms. Right? Does anybody want that on their headstone? Finally, he gave up jelly beans. So the alternative is to ask yourself, what kind of person do you want to be in this domain? So I leave you with that question. In a world where you could choose, right? What do you want more of in your life? Let's assume we're all going to be dead in, I'll give us 70 years. How does that sound? 80 years? Some people are thinking 70 years is a little too close for me. 70 years. Okay, let's assume that we had to start living now. What kind of person do you want to be? What kind of things do you want to go for in your life? And so I'll just end it with that, and thank you.
By the time we're 60, more than 90% of us will have known someone close to us who has suffered from some sort of a neurological disorder.
You all know you're not going to live forever. There's only one way into this life and one way out.
I cannot prove to you anymore that anything is possible.
Talk about the marvelous thing that we now understand about our brains.
It gets so much better.